You're a dentist and want a better life in a European country. If you have considered Denmark, I gotta tell you it's a good option and dentists are needed in this country. Watch this video till the end to learn how to immigrate to Denmark as a dentist. Hey everyone, I'm Behnan from the Visa Library. This channel gives visa information and the latest news and updates. First things first, subscribe to our channel, hit the bell and download the free cheat sheet my team has prepared from the link in the description. You should also follow us on Instagram and Facebook to get the latest visa news and updates. Now, let's begin. For the first step, let me ask you this question. What are the requirements to immigrate and work in Denmark as a dentist? The requirements up to your nationality and where you received your degree and training. The rules and regulations are different for EU and non-EU nationals. I'll explain the differences a bit later. Now let's get to know the requirements. The first one is a dental degree. You must have a dental degree to immigrate to Denmark as a dentist. The procedure you have to follow is up to your nationality and where you received your degree. It's much easier to immigrate to Denmark as a dentist if you got your degree from Denmark and the EU countries, but don't worry, I'll cover everything in the video. The second item is Danish language proficiency. You must become fluent in Danish to be qualified. You have to send the language proficiency certificate in your application as well. Also, there is a language test that you must pass in Denmark to become qualified and continue the rest of the stages. So you must learn the language and master it. The third requirement is to have work experience. You must have work experience to become eligible. If 6 years have passed since completing your education and training, you must have 1 year of professional work experience as a dentist as well. The fourth item is registration with the Danish officials. If you got your degree from outside of Denmark, you have to register with the Danish Patient Safety Authority. They evaluate your degree and work experience to show whether they are qualified or not. If you're eligible, you must pass the language and dental test. The fifth requirement is to have a clear medical and character background. Your background must be clear and you must be a licensed dentist in your home country. There cannot be anything wrong with your work experience as well. Alright then, this was the list of requirements, but before going to the next section, let me ask you this. Who is in charge of professional recognition in Denmark? The responsible authority that evaluates your medical degree and approves you can work as a dentist in Denmark is Danish Patient Safety Authority, DPSA. They are responsible for the recognition process and hold the various stages in partnership with other organizations. Now it's time to get to know the steps you have to follow. As I told you, the procedure you have to follow to become a dentist in Denmark is up to your nationality. It's different for EU and non-EU nationals. First, let's denote what EU members have to do. For the first step, you have to complete the online application form. You can get the form from the Danish Patient Safety Authority website. Complete the form with your information, then approve and send it. You can find the link in the description. There is also a fee for completing the form that you have to pay. The fee is 1,206 Danish krone or DKK to work independently and 4,165 DKK for registration of specialist qualifications. After completing the form, you must gather the list of supporting documents and send them to Danish officials. Here is a list of documents you have to collect. Number 1, documents about changing your name and marriage certificate. Number 2, educational documents in the EU. Number 3, EU diploma if you have it. Number 4, certificate of good standing or certificate of current professional status. It must state that you have permission to work as a dentist in your home country. It cannot be older than 3 months ago at the time of application. Number 5, completing a specialist training certificate, if applicable, and it must have been issued by the competent health authority in the country you have practiced dentistry. Number 6, certificate of completing a specialist qualification if applicable. Number 7, certificate of confirming that you meet this training requirement. Number 8, power of attorney if someone else is applying on your behalf, like an agent or Danish employer. Number 9, translation. If your documents are not in English or Danish, you need to have them translated into one of these languages, but you do not need translation if you apply from Sweden and Norway. If you do not send a translated version of your documents, you should expect a longer processing time. The translation must be from the university, the authority that issued the document, or a verified translation office in the heading and stamps with the address and telephone number. Number 10 is identity document and a copy of your passport, name, date of birth, nationality. You should also make it clear where you have worked in the last 5 years. It's up to you to submit the documents that prove your work experience. After you gather all of the documents, you have to send them electronically to the Danish officials at their email address. If you email the documents, you have to ensure that the quality of the scanned form of documents is good and readable. You can also post the documents to their postal address. Let me tell you this, if you send an original copy of the documents, you have to prepare a copy of them as well. The copy must be in A4 format and without paper clips, folders and other attachments. You should also include a postal address in your application. The original form of documents will be sent back to your postal address. Now comes the second step, assessment of the application. After you send the documents to the Danish officials, they will email you and confirm that they have received the documents. If one part is missing or they need further supporting documents, they notify you to submit them. It takes up to 3 months until the Danish officials assess your documents. You would better submit a complete list of supporting documents. If the officials ask for another document, the processing time will be longer. The authorities will send you the result through email. If the decision is negative, they will notify you about the assessment result before they send you the final decisions. Now comes the third stage, the results. After you receive the positive result, you will be registered with the Danish healthcare system. The permission to work independently as a dentist or a specialist registration will appear on the online register of healthcare professionals. You can find the link in the description. You, the employers, and anyone with your information can check your status on this platform. You can move to Denmark and begin your work as a dentist as the authorization permits you. You will receive your registration ID, and with other personal information, you can enter the online registration of healthcare professionals. You do not need a work visa or work permit to work in Denmark for the long term. You just need to inform the local officials. The process for EU nationals ends here. Now let's learn the procedure for non-EU, non-EEA, and non-Nordic nationals. This procedure is for 3 types of dentists who want to work in Denmark. Number 1. If you're a national of a non-EU or EEA country and have finished your dental training in a non-EU or EEA country. Number 2. You're a national of a non-EU or EEA country and have completed dental training in an EU or EEA country but not in Denmark. Number 3. You're a national of an EU or EEA country and you have finished your dental training in a non-EU or EEA country. The point is that you have permission to apply for registration under the special EU or EEA provisions. You can do this if you have work experience for at least 3 years in another EU or EEA country. What is the first stage you have to pass? The first step is the application form and supporting documents. Before you start gathering the documents, you must look at the duration of your dental education. Is it less than 5 years? If yes, you would better not apply and end the process here. Why? Because the Danish officials do not recognize your education to be equivalent to the Danish one in terms of quality and quantity. You will be rejected. The duration of the dental program in Denmark is 5 years and 1 year of training. But contact the Danish officials and determine if they accept your application or not. There might be a way. You should also know about the 6-year rule. If 6 years have passed since the end of your education and the date you're applying to work in Denmark as a dentist, you must have 1 year of work experience as a professional dentist to become eligible. If it's not, your application will be rejected. If you qualify for the terms I mentioned, you must complete the online application form and send the printed version and other documents to Danish officials. You can access the application form from the Danish Patient Safety Authority website. The link is in the description. Then you have to gather the list of supporting documents. This is the list of documents you have to gather. Remember that you have to submit 2 copies of the documents beside the original one or a certified copy of the documents you submit. You should also follow the order of the documents. Number 1 is identity documents, name, date of birth, nationality, and a certified copy of your passport's first page. Number 2, documents of name change if you have changed your name. Number 3, the translation of the documents that you have changed your name or if it's not in English. Number 4, diploma of completing your primary education as a dentist. Number 5, your CV. It must list your qualification and work experience in the time order you received them. Number 6, your diploma plus the translation into English or Danish if it's not in these 2 languages. Number 7, verification of your degree. You have to get your educational degree verified. There are 2 ways to do this. Number 1, completing the required form and sending it directly to the Danish Patient Safety Authority. You can find the Word file of the form from the link in the description. Number 2, the university or school issues a certificate and contains the same information in the Word file I told you about. It must be on the university school or the school letterhead with the stamp and the educational institution. Remember that the university or education center must send the certificate or diploma directly to the Danish Patient Safety Authority. The name of the center must be on the envelope and it must be sealed. If the certificate is not in English, the Danish Patient Safety Authority sends the certificate to you and you have to get it translated by a verified translation office. The essential point is that the Danish officials will not accept the certificate if you as the applicant send it to them. Number 8 is your transcripts of the educational program. It must include duration of the program, theoretical education, subjects and lecture hours of each subject, clinical education, subject and clinical hours of each subject, number of weeks per semester. Number 9 is translation of your transcripts. Number 10, validation of registration. You must validate your registration by the competent authority in the country you have passed your training or the country you have lived most recently. It also gets called a certificate of current professional status or a certificate of good standing. There are 2 ways to do this. 1. Complete and send the required form to the Danish officials. You can get it from the link in the description. Number 2. Competent authority issues a certificate that contains the information on the form on it. The relevant authority must complete and send the form or the issued certificate to the Danish Patient Safety Authority. If you as the dentist applicant send the form, the authorities will not accept it. Remember that the sent document must confirm that you are legally allowed to work as a dentist and you have not broken the rules or regulations and have not been guilty of a crime. It must not be older than 3 months ago at the time of application. If it's not in English, Danish officials will assess it and send it to you and you have to get it translated by a verified translation office. Number 11 is the 6-year rule document. You need documents of at least 12 months of professional work experience as a dentist. If it's true and 6 years have passed since completing your education, the document must verify full-time employment and detailed information about your daily professional tasks. If the 6-year rule is true and you don't have full-time work experience, part-time work experience equivalent to 12 months will suffice. But the work experience must have been in the latest 6 years to the date you apply to the Danish officials. Number 12 is additional information or supplementary documents. If there are important documents that need to be assessed in your application, you have to send them. Number 13 is power of attorney if another person, including job centers, municipalities, other ones, handles your application. After you're done gathering the documents, you have to post them to Danish authorities. Let me tell you this, you must always send the original form of numbers 7 and 10 in the list I told you about. You will receive the original documents by post to your address after evaluation. If you send copies of your documents, you have to send a certified copy of them as well. It must be verified by one of these options. 1. The embassy or consulate. 2. The notary public. 3. The police. 4. The authority that issued the documents. The copied documents must have a stamp in English or Danish that they are verified copies of the original documents. The authority that verifies the documents must be accessible and identifiable by Danish officials. These items cannot certify the copies of your documents, private individuals, employees of employment agencies. Now comes the second step, assessment of the application. After the Danish Patient Safety Authority receives your application and documents, they will email you and confirm receiving them. You should also check the spam section as you might receive their email in this part. If one part of your documents is missing or the Patient Safety Authority needs further documents, they will tell you to send them, but you do not receive confirmation for this part. Danish officials assess your application and evaluate whether you are eligible to take the test in the next steps. After completing the assessment, the Danish Patient Safety Authority informs you of the result through an email or Danish digital mailbox if you hold a Danish CPR number, or a letter. If the decision is positive, you will receive information about how to get Danish authorization and permission to work independently as a dentist. But this permission is not enough to work as a dentist. You have to follow other steps as well. Let me tell you this point at this stage as well. If you change your address or home, you have to inform the Danish officials. If they send you a letter, you have to receive it, and in case of changing address, things get complicated. The processing time is a bit long. For instance, the applications received in the second half of 2020 will be processed in the second quarter of 2023. Two conditions speed up the procedure of your application. 1. Having a Danish CPR number. 2. Living in Denmark and having a Danish CPR number. If your CPR registration is complete, the Danish officials will prioritize your application automatically. But if they don't know that you are in Denmark, you should inform them through an email or by phoning them. +45 72 28 6600. Now comes the third stage, language test. At this step, you have to pass the Danish language test to become eligible for the next stages. It's a must to pass this test and submit the certificate. Forget mastering English and working in Denmark as a dentist speaking English. You have to be proficient in Danish and submit the certificate. You can also take the test before submitting your documents for registration, but it must be less than 12 months before you apply for registration. If you prove that you have stayed in Denmark after taking the test, the 12-month rule doesn't apply to you. The test is called Danish 3 exam. The least required score is 10, 7 and 7. The test consists of written and oral part. 1. Reading comprehension, the passing score is 10. 2. Written communication, the passing score is 7. Oral communication, the passing score is 7. You can take the test twice a year. There are 2 dates to take the test. May and June, and November and December. There are various language centers in Denmark where you can take the test with one of them. Yes, you have to visit Denmark to take the language test. I'll tell you how to get to Denmark to pass the tests. In some cases, you do not need the language proficiency certificate. You do not need if one of these options is true for you. Number 1, you have passed the Danish 3 exam and got the required score. It has been no more than 12 months of submitting the documents. Number 2, you have lived in Denmark after you passed the exam and got the required score. Number 3, you have passed a Danish upper secondary education. Number 4, you have completed one of these exams and got the diploma, higher preparatory examination, GIF, IB, education in Denmark at university, business schools and nursing schools, the study test from language centers. After you take the language test, you have to post the test result to the Danish Patient Safety Authority. The original certificate will be returned to your postal address. If you're in Denmark and receive the result of your test, you can deliver the test result in person to the Danish Patient Safety Authority. You can phone or email them to know where to submit the language test results. The officials will send you an email and inform you how to register for the dental test. The fourth stage is the dental test. After the officials verify the language test result, you have to take the dental test. The Patient Safety Authority will notify the University of Copenhagen and you will be registered for the written part of the exam. If you do not want to or cannot take it, you have to unregister from the test. If you do not unregister for the exam and miss the deadline, you will have 1 failure to attend in your history. You have permission to unregister your exam 1 month before the date. You have to contact the examination office or visit them in person to unregister. What if you get sick and cannot take part in the exam? In this case, you need a medical certificate from your doctor. It must contain the doctor's stamp and ID. You have to send it to the officials no less than 3 days after getting sick. Remember that if there are no enough applicants for the test, the Danish Patient Safety Authority might cancel it and you have to take it another time. But what is the structure of the dental test? The test consists of a written test and an oral test and is held twice a year, in May and November. The written test takes 4 hours. There are questions related to dentistry that you have to answer. There is no score result and it is a pass-fail test. You have to get the pass result. Then comes the oral test. Danish officials access you to the KU self-service system at KU.net. You can register for the oral exam through this service. Now is the turn for the 5th stage. Take the course in Danish health legislation. After passing the dental test, you have to take a course in Danish health legislation. It's a 3-day course taking place at the Danish Patient Safety Authority. You do not have to pay any fees and you will receive meals too. The course is made up of group teaching and group work. There are 3 modules in the course and you have to take a written test at the end of each module. Module 1. The structure of the Danish healthcare system. You will find out about the Danish health service and the organization. Also, you will learn about the damage possibility and the supervisory function of the Danish Patient Safety Authority. Module 2. What are the patient's rights? You will know about the patient's rights and get familiar with the cases that have been difficult to manage. The course provides information about the confidentiality, informed consent, and legally impeccable people, rules, and regulations. The purpose of the second module is to provide the participants with the extensive knowledge of fundamental patient rights, with particular emphasis on situations that have been difficult to handle in practice for healthcare professionals trained outside Denmark. The special focus will be on informed consent, legally incapable people, and confidentiality. Module 3. Dentist Obligations and Rights. You will get familiar with your obligations authorized by the officials and healthcare professionals. Also, you will know how your rights can be affected or restricted. After the Danish officials confirm your language test results, you can apply to take the course. You have to email the officials to send your name, date of birth, case number. After 14 days, you will receive a confirmation by digital post to follow the next stage. It is mandatory to take part in all of the courses, and if you cannot, you can take the courses another time, but the time will be longer for you. If you cannot take part in the course, you have to unregister for it. To do so, you have to send a written note to the official email address. If you do not unregister, it will be counted as one attempt and you only have 3 attempts. If you get sick and cannot participate in the course, you need a medical certificate from your doctor with doctor's stamp and provider's ID. You have to send it to the same email address. The email must be sent no later than 3 working days after you find out about your illness. After you complete the course, the Danish Patient Safety Authority will send you a letter and confirm completing the course. Let's get to the stage 6, employment for training and adaptation. After you receive the letter from the Danish Patient Safety Authority that your training is over, you can apply for employment in Denmark to get training and adapt yourself to the healthcare system. This is to improve your skills and get familiar with the dentist procedures in Denmark. But you have to take the training no more than 12 months after taking the dental test or the educational course. You have to find a job with a dental clinic in Denmark. The clinic will evaluate your work and send a report to the Danish Patient Safety Authority after the first month and in the last month of the employment. So you have to work hard and prove yourself to the clinic that the Danish Patient Safety Authority. It is your responsibility to find a job and apply for it. After you find a training position, you must apply for evaluation authorization from the Danish Patient Safety Authority to start the training. This permission is only to take the training, and you have no permission to work for another clinic, in a temporary position, on the weekends, or during your holiday. You need permission to work in the training position and have to wait for it to be issued. You have to email this information to get the evaluation authorization. Number 1, name. Number 2, address. Number 3, telephone number. Number 4, date of birth. Number 5, the clinic you take the training and its contact details, telephone numbers, email, and postal address. Number 6, the name of the authorized dentist who will evaluate your work or training. Number 7, employment contract with the information about the start date of your evaluation employment. It must contain all the details of your employment. Number 8, your updated CV. Number 9, your journal number, if applicable. It takes up to 14 days for the evaluation authorization to be issued. You have to wait for it, then you can begin your training. After you receive your evaluation authorization, you can see it on the Agency for Patient Safety Public Authorization Register. The link is in the description. The next stage is the result of the assessment. After you complete the training, the clinic will send the assessment result to the Danish Patient Safety Authority. If the assessment is positive, you get Danish authorization and permission to work independently as a dentist. If the assessment is negative and you cannot improve your clinical or communication skills, the Danish Patient Safety Authority will decide about your case by your situation. The point I must tell you is about the declaration of good standing. While you prepare for the training or apply for the evaluation authorization, ensure that the competent health authorities where you got your degree or training have sent the declaration of good standing to the agency or patient safety. It verifies that you have permission to work as a dentist in your home country or the country you received your degree. Now let's get to the 7th stage, specialist oral surgery and orthodontics. You can work as a dentist in Denmark after you get your Danish authorization and permission. Also, you can begin your training to become a specialist in oral surgery and orthodontics. If you have a foreign specialist in dental education, you can also apply for an assessment for it. The training to become an orthodontics takes 3 years and it takes place at dental schools in Copenhagen and Aarhus. The training to become oral surgery takes 5 years and it takes place in the competent hospital department. If you have completed your oral surgery and orthodontics training outside of the EU or EEA, Liechtenstein or Switzerland, you can apply for an assessment of your certificate, but it must be after passing the stages I discussed and getting permission to work as a dentist in Denmark. You should contact the Danish health authorities and email them. They will guide you on the stages you have to follow to become a specialist in Denmark. You have to pay 4,165 Norwegian krone and send the supporting documents. The processing time is about 3 months. The process and the stages you have to follow ends here. I'm done with them. But as I told you, most of the process takes place in Denmark. You have to spend a lot of time in Denmark to become dentist there. The recognition process, language test, and educational courses are held inside the country. Can you stay all of this time in Denmark? If yes, how should you get permission to stay for such a long time in Denmark? There are various options by your nationality. If you're an EU national, you do not need a residence permit and visa to enter and stay in Denmark. If you're a non-EU national but a member of the visa-waived countries, you can stay in Denmark with your passport for 90 days, but not longer. If you're a non-EU national but are not among the visa-waived countries, you need a visitor or tourist visa to enter the country and complete the procedure. It only allows you to stay in Denmark for 90 days and you have to leave the country before the visa expiry. It could cost you a lot of money to visit and leave Denmark. Also, tourist visa application is a bit hard. There is another way as well, and it is a residency for authorization. It permits you to stay in Denmark for long term and receive authorization from the Danish officials to become a dentist. This permit is just to live in Denmark, learn the language, pass the language test and dental test and the educational course that is required for dentists. It doesn't permit you to work. If you want to work, you need a separate work permit. Also, you must have enough money to cover your expenses in Denmark during your stay. Let me bring this question. What is the condition to get residency for authorization? As I told you, Danish Patient Safety Authority is responsible for evaluating your certificate and documents to immigrate to Denmark as a dentist. You have to send your documents to them and receive approval. If they get the approval, you can apply for the residency for authorization. You have to submit a copy of the approval letter along with the other documents to the immigration officials. Remember an essential point. You have to be able to support yourself or your family during your stay in Denmark. You must have enough money to cover yourself and your expenses, as you cannot work under this residence permit. This residence permit allows you to stay in Denmark for up to 3 years as a dentist or doctor. You can extend it for another 2 years if you submit the documents that you have passed the language test, but you may not extend it after 5 years. You can also bring your family to Denmark and they can stay with you, but you must have enough money to cover their expenses as well. You can bring your spouse, registered or cohabiting partner, and children under 18. Now comes the question of how to apply for residence permit for authorization. Here is the procedure you have to follow to get the residence permit for authorization. Step 1. Create a case order ID. First, you have to create a case order ID on the SIRI, the Danish Agency for International Recruitment and Integration website. You need this information to create it. 1. Personal names, passport number, email address. You have to visit the SIRI website to create the case order. The link is in the description. Are you ready? Step 2 is to pay the application fee. After you receive your case order ID, you have to pay the fee for visa processing. The residence permit for authorization costs you 1,890 Norwegian crown. You have to pay it online with a credit or debit card. You have to pay the fee from the link I told you that you could find it in the description. Let's get to the next stage. Step 3. Collect the supporting documents. You can start this stage before creating the case order ID. It will speed up the process. This is the list of documents you have to gather. 1. Copy of all pages of your passport. 2. Approved form of the Danish Patient Safety Authority that they have approved your documents. 3. Evidence that you can cover your expenses in Denmark, such as bank statements. 4. Receipt of paid visa fees. This is a general list of documents, but Danish officials could ask for further documents by your nationality and case. If your documents are not in English, German, Norwegian, Swedish, or Danish, you must have them translated into English or Danish. Then comes step 4, complete the application form. After gathering the documents, you have to complete the online application form. It's available on the SIRI website from the link I told you about. You can also complete your PayPal application form and you can get it from the same source. The choice is yours, but the online application is faster. Now comes the step 5, submit the application. If you have submitted the online application form, your application has already been submitted. You just need to submit your biometrics to the Danish embassy or consulate. What if you completed the paper application form. You have to submit it with the other documents to the Danish embassy or consulate or visa center responsible for visa processing in your home country or a neighboring one. You can find a list of them from the link in the description. If you're in Denmark, you can submit your application to Siri branch office, but your stay must be legal. You either have a tourist visa or are exempt from a visa by your nationality. The sixth step is biometrics. You have to submit your biometrics, digital photo and fingerprints. If you do not so, your application will be rejected. If you have submitted an online application, you have to submit your biometrics up to 14 days after applying. You have to visit Danish diplomatic mission abroad or one of the Siri's branch offices. If you cannot visit the center or there is no available time, you have to inform the officials. If you submit the paper application form, you have to visit the Danish diplomatic mission or an application center in your home country or a neighboring one. If there is no Danish embassy or consulate or visa center, you might be able to visit Norwegian missions. It depends on your home country. The last or seventh stage is the response. The processing time is up to 1 month. Siri will contact you if they need further supporting documents or if there is something wrong with your application. When you get the permit, you can move to Denmark and stay as long as your permit is valid to complete the language and dental tests. Alright then, this is all you must know to immigrate to Denmark as a dentist. If you have questions, write them down in the comment section. The Visa Library team will answer them. Before you leave, like this video, hit the bell, and don't forget to get the free PDF file my team has prepared from the link in the description. You should also follow us on Instagram and Facebook to get the latest visa news and updates. Until the next video, thank you all for watching.